Hello, good evening. Welcome to North West Tonight. I'm Roger Johnson. Here's our top story. Schools closed and treacherous travel as temperatures here plunged to their lowest levels of the winter. We'll also hear about a dramatic operation involving 60 mountain rescuers after a walker got into trouble in the Peak District. Also tonight, with the Oldham abuse scandal at the centre of an international political storm, we'll talk to one of the victims.
The slanderous comments aren't needed against Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips, but he does have a point, Elon Musk.
Why the region's spectacular limestone pavements, a special habitat for plants and wildlife, are now under threat.
Pete, what have we got here?
Jingle all the way to the bank, how collecting Christmas trees in Macclesfield has helped raise millions for hospices.
And we've got two of the coldest nights in winter to come. Join me at the end of the programme. I'll have all the details.
It's been another day of wintry weather disruption across the northwest. Many schools were closed again, and there was difficulty for travellers in lots of places. But after the rain and flooding at New Year and the snow which followed that, this time it is sub-zero temperatures which are causing problems. Let's go live to Katie Barnfield. She's at Macclesfield in Cheshire for us tonight, where, Katie, it is cold.
It is, absolutely, Roger, and it's going to get even colder tonight. Here in Macclesfield, it's expected to get down to about -8 overnight. Some areas in the northwest could even get as cold as -12. As you say, there have been school closures once again across our region today. In Cheshire East here alone, 27 schools had to shut their doors because of the bad weather. Another big concern, of course, in these conditions is people who can't afford the heating to put their heating on or who simply have nowhere else to go. Here, they've been opening up warm hubs, for instance, at Macclesfield Library, where people have been able to go inside and also get things like hot water bottles and gloves if they need to. The Severe Weather Emergency Protocol, also known as SWEP, has also been put in place here and in several other areas across the northwest tonight. That means extra support to try and bring rough sleepers in from the cold. In Manchester, volunteer groups like Don't Walk Past have also been going out, giving out things like sleeping bags and hot food to those who don't feel able to come inside.
They tell all of us how it's safer to sleep on the streets because you're not getting, when you've got someone that's on drugs and you're not, you're side by side. The fear of getting robbed by the person with an addiction, is higher. So some of them say it's safer.
And Katie, as we mentioned, there have been problems on the transport network as well.
There have. On the trains, for instance, Merseyrail and Northern Rail, for instance, have had several cancellations and delays because of the bad weather. The trams in Greater Manchester have also been badly affected. There were severe delays across the network earlier on. Of course, the roads are also extremely treacherous in these conditions. Earlier on, Lancashire Police put out this picture of a car that had lost control and skidded into a barrier on the A56. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but both the police and councils are advising people to please not drive unless it's absolutely necessary.
The salt and the grit works best if it can go down before the snow lands. So we're trying to get that out as soon as possible. We cover over 40% of our roads with grit, but that leaves 60% that is ungritted, and therefore they can be quite dangerous. So just take care out there and question if you really need to go out or not.
Unfortunately, it is not the end of this cold snap just yet, though it could be even colder tomorrow night.
Katie, thank you very much. Katie Barnfield there live for us in Macclesfield. Not far from there, a walker was treated in hospital last night for severe hypothermia after 60 mountain rescue volunteers were called out in the Peak District. It was this time yesterday. Dave Stowell from the Glossop Mountain Rescue Team helped to lead the operation.
He'd gone out for a walk onto Bleaklow, following a route that he knew where he was going, and just got into some difficulty during the conditions. The snow's very deep up in places, so we contacted two of our local teams, so Kinder Mountain Rescue Team and Edale Mountain Rescue Team, to also provide resources to come and assist us. It was probably somewhere in the region of around, with wind chill, it was probably around -10. The snow was very deep in places up to your waist, where it had been blown around over the last couple of days. So yeah, it was a very challenging rescue. And by the end of the incident, there were 60 people involved in getting the gentleman off the hill and off to an ambulance that could then take him to Tameside Hospital.
That was Dave Stowell from Glossop Mountain Rescue. Molly will have the full weather forecast for us at the end of the programme. Now, you will, I'm sure, have seen the row between the British government and the South African-born American billionaire Elon Musk over the past few days. It centres on Oldham and allegations that Musk has made against the Prime Minister and a Cabinet Minister about grooming gangs who've abused children in the town. Well, the Conservatives want a national inquiry. The government says it doesn't think another inquiry is needed. But what about the victims themselves? What do they want? One woman's been talking to Phil McCann. She says she's happy that it's being talked about, but not the way in which it's being done.
We've all gone through trauma and we deserve our voices to be heard and we deserve change. This topic needs to be highlighted a lot more. People need to stop being scared of discussing it.
This is Sophie, but that's not her real name. She turned up to Oldham's police station 19 years ago when she was 12 to report being sexually assaulted. Officers there, though, told her to come back when she wasn't drunk. Then 2 men outside the building beckoned her into a car where they raped her around the corner. That began a night-long ordeal where she was transported around 2 houses in Oldham where she was used for sex by multiple men. She became a victim of grooming gangs.
I feel like now is the time where they need to prove themselves and say that we realise that there was a problem and now we're going to sort it.
Sophie's story was at the centre of a review into child sexual exploitation in Oldham in 2022. It found children had been failed by police and the agencies meant to protect them. They agreed to look at old cases again. But there have long been concerns that inquiry back in 2022 wasn't wide enough. It only covered a 4-year period. It was only asked to answer some quite specific questions. And since then, there have been repeated calls for a more broad inquiry and for this council to ask the government to get involved.
You have not answered the question!
Those calls have often been loud and angry, but they were resisted by the Labour Council leadership until election losses meant they no longer had a majority of councillors. The government was then asked to hold an inquiry, but Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips said no. And then...
Today at 1, the Prime Minister hits back at lies over child sexual exploitation.
Elon Musk used his social media platform X to call for Ms Phillips to be imprisoned as what he called a rape genocide apologist. He said the Prime Minister was complicit in the crimes and should also be jailed.
The slanderous comments aren't needed against Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips, but he does have a point, Elon Musk, and I appreciate him giving that presence of this issue.
And there were calls from the Conservatives, repeated today, for a national inquiry into rape gangs.
The Prime Minister called for 9 inquiries in the last Parliament. Does he not see that by resisting this one, people will start to worry about a cover-up?
They want a national inquiry. We had a national inquiry, the J inquiry, the J report. 20 recommendations, not a single one implemented.
I feel that if we had a national inquiry, Oldham would be overshadowed by everything else.
Oldham Council is now starting to set up a locally led inquiry into child sexual exploitation. Sophie and opposition members still want it to be government led, though.
It's important that the government led the inquiry because they can compel all the agencies to respond to that inquiry. They can put a legal pressure on them to do so that we can't do locally.
The council says it's working closely with survivors and their families to ensure they don't just have a voice, but will have a central role in developing the inquiry.
So you want the government to lead an inquiry into Oldham, but you don't want it to look just at grooming gangs?
No, I want it to cover all sexual abuse in that kind of format. You can't say that one type of abuse is worse than the other. What needs to be really looked at is what led up to the victims being put into that situation.
Phil McCann, BBC North West Tonight, Oldham.
The calls for baby killer Lucy Letby to face a retrial will be debated in the House of Commons this evening. It's being raised by the Conservative MP Sir David Davis, who's spent time looking at the case and the role of expert witnesses who gave evidence in the trial. Letby, as you know, is serving 15 whole life sentences for murdering infants at the Countess of Chester Hospital. A man has been charged with murdering a 19-year-old who was stabbed to death on a night out in Ormskirk. Matthew Dalby from Liverpool was found with knife wounds in July 2023. Thomas Juris from Orton in Lancashire is due in court tomorrow. The family of a woman who died in a Blackpool restaurant say that she lay undiscovered in a toilet for 2 days. Sabrina Little was dining at the Gurkha when she went into the disabled toilet and didn't return. The restaurant says that she gained access to the locked facility without their knowledge. Police are not treating her death as suspicious. Scientists at the University of Manchester say they've found that repeated head impacts, such as heading the ball in football, could trigger the onset of Alzheimer's disease. They say that their study suggests that concussions might activate a common virus in the brain, increasing the risk of Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative conditions. The Hillsborough campaigner Margaret Aspinall has been given Knowsley's highest honour. She's been awarded the Freedom of the Borough. Her 18-year-old son James was one of the 97 victims of the Hillsborough disaster. Knowsley Council says that the honour is in recognition of Margaret's work campaigning for justice. Now, we heard earlier about the impact of the freezing weather, and as we mentioned last night, if you were watching, the impact on the NHS, of course, can be huge. Yesterday, the Royal Liverpool declared a critical incident where some patients faced a 50-hour wait in A&E, and that incident is still ongoing. We spoke to Lancashire's Director of Public Health as well about flu vaccinations. Well, many of you got in touch about both of those topics. Our health correspondent, Jill Dummigan, looked through all your comments, and she's here now with some of them. Jill.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, a lot of you have had personal experience of all of this. Diane Holt wrote in to say her 85-year-old mum was taken to the Royal Albert Edward Infirmary in Wigan with flu symptoms and a chest infection. She also suffers from heart failure. She was kept on a trolley in a corridor for almost 60 hours. Diane said this is not acceptable and was very traumatic for her. Kerry Hutchinson emailed us about her dad, who was admitted to Salford Royal with sepsis. She said he waited 30 hours for a bed, was discharged the same day, was back in an ambulance on his way back there 3 hours later, and then waited another 11 hours on a corridor. She said something needs to be done. We need our NHS. And last week we got an email from Kirsty Gray. Her 80-year-old dad, Colin, waited for 40 hours on a trolley in Arrow Park Hospital with heart problems. Today she told me what that was like.
Staff were trying to be as helpful as they could, but they were totally overstretched and overwhelmed with, incoming patients through A&E. He was quite uncomfortable. There wasn't a lot of monitoring. It was really a waiting room to still be seen.
Now, we also got emails about the flu vaccination programme. There's been another plea today from NHS England for eligible people to get the jab. But some have told us the vaccines run out at some pharmacies. And Claire Bowen also pointed out that it largely relies on people being able to navigate an online system. I spoke to NHS England about this today. They told me there should be plenty of stock available, but it is late in the season. So if your local pharmacy doesn't have it, you can use the online Find a Pharmacy service to look up another one, or you can also ring your GP for an appointment. Now, there's also the question of who's eligible. 2 years ago, it was the over 50s, but in May 2023, the last government bumped that up to 65. We did discuss this last night, and Dave Robinson, who's 61, got in touch and said he'd tried to get vaccinated by both his GP and local chemist without success. Now, you can pay for it. It'll cost between £10 and £20. But the point is that this group of people isn't now being reminded and pushed by the NHS system to get that jab. Given the current situation, we did ask the Department for Health and Social Care about this. They said they're guided by expert advice. Roger.
Thank you very much, Jill, and thank you, of course, to you for all of your comments on that issue last night. Now, Chester Zoo is the region's busiest tourist attraction, but hidden from public view at the back of the site is a newly expanded science centre, and that is the biggest in Europe to improve the study of endangered species. Stuart Pollitt has been to take a look.
An early breakfast for Zori, an eastern black rhino at Chester Zoo. But keeper Carmen's interested in what comes out later. One of your favourite jobs?
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's not the glamorous one, but we collect the samples every other day during the week, so we get them super regular. We collect them in order to send off to our lab here at the zoo. It helps us with a range of different things. It helps us keep track of the animal's health, as well as for the females, particularly Zori, we can track her cycle through the year. This helps us with mixing the rhinos.
They've had a lab here since 2007, but this new site is 3 times bigger. That means more research and testing can take place, which can potentially have an impact right around the world.
We're one of the largest wildlife reproduction endocrine labs in Europe. We actually operated kind of in one room before, and now we've actually got a training lab. We've got 3 different facilities that we can work in, and it really enables us to do lots of different kind of tests than we used to do in the past.
Results from those tests have helped critically endangered black rhinos in Kenya.
We have actually used these techniques out in the field now, and we've set up labs out in Kenya for them to hopefully use similar techniques to try and manage their own population, the wild population.
They're hoping for similar success to what they've already had here with Zori.
Being able to see the lab results of her season allowed us to pinpoint the perfect day for her to be mixed with Gabe, our male.
The result of that was baby Lumi, a small step forward in a scientific journey aimed at better boosting the perilous population of eastern black rhinos.
Stuart Pollitt there at Chester Zoo. Now, this is something called a limestone pavement. You've probably seen it, a huge flat area of exposed rock, quite common, a spectacular feature as well in upland areas in this part of the world. And they're also a unique habitat and home to many rare plants. But a new study by scientists at the University of Lancaster shows that many of those plants are now at risk. And our environment correspondent, Judy Hobson, has been to the Gate Barrows Nature Reserve in Silverdale to find out more.
Limestone pavements are one of our most distinctive landscapes. Plants such as ferns grow within deep gaps and cracks, known as grikes.
So the limestone was formed many millions of years ago, but the features that we see now started with glaciation.
Professor Carly Stevens has dedicated the last few years to studying this rare landscape. It's the first study of its kind in half a century.
They're beautiful. You've got this hidden world of plants. There's some really interesting species and really interesting associations, which I think makes them a very special place. We also get some species that are quite rare. So there's some ferns, the rigid buckler fern, that we don't really find outside of limestone pavements. Some orchids that are very rare, and also some snails and butterflies that are associated with the habitat that are quite rare as well.
But limestone pavements are changing, and it's affecting the rare plants that grow here.
Some areas have had big changes because there's now too many trees. And trees are a good thing in a lot of habitats, but in some areas of limestone pavement, the canopy has just become too dense and it gets too dark and we're losing a lot of species. In other areas, we're seeing overgrazing still, too many animals causing damage to the vegetation by eating it. There's some areas that have improved, and there are increasing the efforts to conserve limestone pavements and their vegetation.
Well, this is an area where the surface of the limestone has been extracted, but thanks to that original study 50 years ago, landscapes like this are protected.
This is a national nature reserve that's run by Natural England. These are an irreplaceable habitat. I really hope that this study will show people how important limestone pavements are, but also that it will provide the beginnings for how we can change our management, how we can adjust management to protect these sites. They're absolutely unique and beautiful, and we really need to look after them.
Judy Hobson, BBC North West Tonight, Silverdale.
Beautiful images. Now, Football League Cup holders Liverpool have a chance to move a step closer to defending their title against Tottenham Hotspur.
The teams have such a clear identity and playing style. I know we've scored 6 in that game as well, but scoring 3 against us is what not many teams have done till now.
Meanwhile, we've mentioned him once tonight, so we'll mention him again. Liverpool have distanced themselves from reports that Elon Musk could be interested in buying the club. The billionaire's father told Times Radio that his son would be interested, adding that Elon Musk's grandmother was born in the city. It's understood that Liverpool have no interest in discussing a possible sale with a man reportedly worth almost £400 billion.
Has he expressed a desire to buy Liverpool Football Club?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, but that doesn't mean he's buying it, you know. My mum his grandmother was born in Liverpool, and we have relatives in Liverpool. And so we're attached to Liverpool, you know.
Watch this space. There's a debate in our house at the moment, real tree or artificial next Christmas. It is apparently the time to buy an artificial one if you're going to in the sales, although I had a look this afternoon. It looks like I'm a bit slow on the uptake, because I think most people have already bought them. But real Christmas trees can have a positive impact long after the festive season is over. 25 years ago, just after Christmas, in the year 2000, Richard Raymond and Peter Chapman started collecting Christmas trees and disposing of them in return for a donation, which they then gave to the East Cheshire Hospice in Macclesfield. The idea's caught on. A number of you have already been in touch on email to say, our hospice does it, our hospice does it. Lots of them do. Around 160 hospices, in fact, around the country, now all doing the same after the idea which began in Macclesfield. Here's Phil Cunliffe.
While some of us might find the snow and ice frightfully festive, for most of us, the last thing we want to think about right now is Christmas.
Except there are those niggling reminders, the credit card bill, the piles of paper and cardboard that won't fit in the recycling, the fridge full of cheese, and this, the lonesome pine, neglected and forgotten.
OK, I'll see you, Pete.
See you there.
Righto.
But not by these two. Every January for the past 24 years, Richard and Peter drive their van around East Cheshire, collecting used Christmas trees in exchange for a charitable donation.
27 years ago, my son was sent home with a £10 note from the local church choir. See what you can do with this, as in the parable of the talents. My wife had this absolute brainwave. If you're taking our tree to the tip, could you take other people's trees to the tip? And stuck leaflets through people's doors, phone started ringing, and there we were. This year we'll now be collecting 7,000 trees in one weekend, 300 to 400 helpers, and then we'll raise
£150,000 we'll raise.
There's only one tree to collect today, but it's one of the many down the years recycled and turned into compost or biomass.
Pete, what have we got here?
Oh, this is like the old favourite Nordman fir.
The old favourite Nordman fir.
So admired is Richard and Peter's handiwork that more than 170 other hospices are copying their business model.
They can ring us up, they can email us, and we give them advice from our experience and whatever. And we think that this year there will be about £2.5 million raised this weekend by the other hospices, and over 200,000 trees will be recycled as well. So it's amazing figures.
East Cheshire Hospice say the donations are always a welcome boost at the start of a new year.
It costs around £7 million a year to run this hospice. That's our inpatient unit and our hospice at home services and our day hospice.
And at this time of year, people don't have as much disposable income. How big a challenge is it to keep it going?
So that's what's brilliant about the Christmas tree collection in January. People see that as part of their Christmas giving. So it comes in at just the right time to get us through the difficult winter months.
And it's also a wonderful way of getting out into the community to get the name of the hospice out there. And to have done it for 25 years is just very humbling, and we're very proud to have done it for that long.
Phil Cunliffe, BBC North West Tonight, Macclesfield.
It's fantastic, isn't it? Raising really good funds for the hospice, and a number of people in Lancashire and Merseyside saying that they do it for their local hospice as well. And of course, we've reported as well on them being put on the beach at Formby to help with the sand dunes. So lots of good uses for your Christmas trees once Christmas is over. Right, let's have a look at the weather. It is, of course, all important. Molly is here, and the temperatures, we saw poor old Katie out in Macclesfield, didn't we?
Yes, yeah.
Temperatures are plunging.
They really are. But I guess the good news about plunging temperatures is that we do get sent really pretty photos in still. So you can see this was the scene in Chorley this morning. Frosty, icy conditions in Cumbria. And I imagine we're going to get much more of these over the next few days because it is going to get much colder, as Roger said. Thank you very much for sending your photos in. We always love to see them. If you have your own, you can send them to me on socials, or better yet, you can become a weather watcher and we'll try our very best to feature them. Now, as you heard, it is getting much colder over the next few days. High pressure is building, and this will mean calm and settled conditions, but bitterly cold, especially overnight. I think we reached around -8 degrees in Shap in Cumbria last night. It is going to get much colder than that tonight. But we are going to get a lot of dry weather and plenty of brighter spells too, lots of wintry sunshine on the cards. Overnight tonight, it will be one of the coldest nights of winter tonight. It will start clear. We'll have some showers on the Isle of Man, some of those wintry, and there will be some freezing mist and fog in places. But look at those temperatures, -8, but actually towards the Pennines, we could get up to -12 to 15 degrees. Really very chilly. And then there's a yellow ice and snow warning in place too for parts of Merseyside, Cheshire, and, you know, it is going to be an extremely icy start if you are out on the roads tomorrow morning. And that warning will be from 3 a.m. until midday tomorrow, so that will expire. There'll be some wintry showers first thing, but they will clear, and that will be towards Merseyside as well. But temperature-wise, look at that, around 1 degree Celsius. And that's just a reminder, that warning expiring at 12 midday tomorrow. But plenty of really cold conditions on the cards over the next few days. And then into Friday, it'll be another really cold night from Thursday evening into Friday. But plenty of sun on Friday, so that's good news. Temperatures really quite cold though, really barely getting above freezing. And it is going to be slightly milder, though, towards the weekend, but a bit more in the way of cloud, Roger.
Yeah, Katie made the point, didn't she? People who are lucky enough to be able to put the heating on, it's fine, but it's really cold, and
really
for the
cold.
poor people who haven't got anywhere and they're outside. Molly, thank you. You made the point about the pictures, didn't you?
Yes.
Loads of great pictures, yeah. And we love a nice little montage to finish the programme. So here are some of your pictures to say good night. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.